Today I'm a proud papa. My older son W has gotten his driving permit and started driving. So hopefully he will follow my footsteps and become a car guy and start getting interested in different cars and how they work and, you know, performance mods, all that sort of stuff. I have to say, he's been driving now, this is day 3, and he's way, way, way beyond what I was on day 3 of driving. It's just really amazing. I mean, some of it is probably because when he was a kid, he had Power Wheels, which I didn't have as a kid, and then the golf cart, and so he's driven the golf cart all over the place. And then between my wife, me, and my mother-in-law, he's had some driving, you know, off-road at different locations and stuff, so that probably helps quite a bit. I'm hoping that it sparks an interest in cars. That's kind of how my interest in cars got sparked, was when I was a kid. I didn't really care about cars at all, and you know, couldn't tell you make, model, horsepower, nothing. It probably sounds kind of funny nowadays, but believe it or not, the first car that I ever really aspired to own and really wanted to own and really, you know, pursued and hounded my parents and everything was the Ford Probe GT, the turbo version with I wanted it with the stick shift. And I mean, I thought that car was the be-all, end-all when it first came out. It was crazy aerodynamic, and you know, I think it was rated at 140 horsepower, which was probably twice what my existing car had. Probably 3 times what my first car had. And I mean, I just wanted that car so bad I could taste it. I ended up getting a Ford Probe, just not the GT model. I guess my parents, probably rightfully so, were scared that I might do crazier stuff with more horsepower. So I think I got the 100 horsepower model or whatever, which, you know, it was a little jump up from what I had. But I gotta say, the aerodynamics on that car were just mind-blowing. I mean, when I would drive from my parents' house to college and back, there was a stretch of highway in between there that it was a decent enough downslope that you didn't have to drive, basically. I could put the car in neutral, which you're not supposed to do, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, I put the car in neutral and just coast. And if I didn't ride the brakes, one day I just wanted to see what it would do if I didn't. So no gas, the car's in neutral, coasting. It got up over 100 miles an hour. So any other car I've had that I drove that stretch of road would not do that. But that Probe, like I said, no gas, just letting it coast, would get up over 100 miles an hour. So back then, you know, gas prices were cheap, probably below $1, and a 4-cylinder, and getting that free miles there. You know, I was probably getting insane miles per gallon driving that thing. But after I had that car for a while, I discovered the car that would end up being the one that I really, really, really aspired to have, and pretty much have had one or two since then, and that's the Ford Mustang. So I wanted a red Ford Mustang GT 5-speed, something fierce, and I finally got one. And man, what a difference going from a front-wheel drive 4-cylinder 100 horsepower to a rear-wheel drive rated at 225 horsepower. Who knows if that was even accurate or not. But you know, I had never driven a rear-wheel drive, let alone a V8 prior to that, unless you count my mom's station wagon when I was learning to drive. But anyway, you know, having a stick shift Mustang, you get a little bit of water on the road, and you know, that young man driving style of floor it at every green light and floor it coming out of every stop sign. And it's amazing I didn't wreck that car, because you know, I learned how to tame the rear end, but let me tell you, there was once or twice where totally unexpectedly that rear end just slid out into a oversteer, and I didn't know how to correct it, so it was just like, ah. And you know, thankfully there's nothing around or whatever. But for those of you who don't know, you want to turn into an oversteer. So if the rear end starts shooting out that way, you want to turn your wheel that way, or vice versa. And sometimes you kind of bounce your wheel back and forth, and it'll straighten out. And if you've ever had a Mustang, you know what I'm talking about. The rear end wants to shoot sideways instead of push you forward. So just be prepared with a Mustang that you kind of got to bounce the steering wheel back and forth to go straight a lot of times. So I had that first Mustang for 10 years. I put probably about 40 or 50,000 miles on it during that time. I think it had 60 on it when I sold it, or just under 60. I got it used. It had about 10 to 15,000 miles on it when I got it. But before I sold it, I had, you know, the need for speed, so to speak. I had bought a stroker and made a deal with the folks that are now LMR that they would swap out the motor, and basically they would keep my old motor and put the stroker in for me. Because I definitely did not have the skills and talents or tools to do it back then. Arguably, probably couldn't even do it today, but that's beside the point. Anyway, they told me when they pulled the original motor out of the car, or engine for those of you that want to be grammatically correct, that it still had the factory cross hatchings inside the cylinder walls. So that didn't mean a whole lot to me then, other than I knew that by the tone of their voice that it was good. But that Mustang, I changed the oil every 1,500 miles. And obviously that worked. So kind of why I'm OCD now about changing oil and other fluids and maintenance and everything. Even though now I do about 3,000 mile oil changes. But Ford Boss Me has even said, and I'm sure others have said, you know, there's not a too soon to change oil. I mean, you could, if you had the money, you could change the oil basically every time you drove. But you know, certainly 3,000 mile oil change is not gonna be a bad thing. Anyway, that is about all for today, so I'll see you in the next video.